Have you ever wondered why some people seem to perceive more than what's physically before them? The connection between celestial symbols and enhanced spiritual perception has been whispered about for millennia, but rarely understood. When you have the perfect crescent moon, it's no mere coincidence. Ancient civilizations documented how this particular celestial sign coincides with an awakening of the third eye, the spiritual center that allows us to perceive beyond ordinary reality. Those papyrus texts weren't just recording astronomical observations, they were mapping the human spiritual journey. I've spent years studying these ancient manuscripts and experiencing firsthand the profound shift that occurs when one recognizes and embraces these celestial connections. The patterns are unmistakable. Those who develop awareness of these symbols consistently report expanded consciousness and intuitive abilities that defy conventional explanation. What makes this understanding so transformative isn't just the knowledge itself, but how it fundamentally changes your perception of reality. By the conclusion of our journey together, you'll understand why the eyes you were born with can perceive far more than light and shadow. They are literally gateways to dimensions of understanding that most never access. Stay with me until the end, because I'll be sharing specific techniques from these ancient teachings that you can implement immediately, practices that have helped countless spiritual seekers move from intellectual curiosity to profound awakening. This isn't information to be passively consumed. It's wisdom to be experienced and embodied. Those born with the crescent moon etched upon their palms carry an ancient gift. Their gaze penetrates beyond material forms, revealing the luminous currents that animate all existence. When awakening touches such marked individuals, ordinary vision transforms into a remarkable perception where emotions become visible tapestries and human energies bloom like flowers in an invisible garden. The chosen ones with crescent moon see not with eyes alone but through the wisdom of their entire being, discerning truth from illusion as naturally as birds sense magnetic fields, their perception unbound by conventional limitations. This rare sensitivity does not arrive without purpose. It emerges precisely when the soul has matured enough to bear witness to both shadow and light without becoming entangled in either. In their presence, you may feel strangely transparent, as if those individuals have somehow granted their owner permission to read the unwritten chapters of your heart. Yet fear not this sacred seeing, for it comes paired with profound compassion. Those marked by the crescent moon discover that their perception functions as a cosmic antenna, continuously receiving signals most dismiss as coincidence. This isn't random chance but a profound attunement, a synchronicity magnetism that transforms everyday experiences into meaningful spiritual communications. The crescent signature reorganizes one's energetic field, creating a resonance that draws significant experiences precisely when needed for soul evolution. Consider how electromagnetic fields operate in the physical world, invisibly organizing metal filings into perfect patterns that reveal underlying forces. Similarly, the crescent moon signature rearranges the quantum field surrounding the individual, creating an ordered pattern that naturally attracts experiences, people, and insights that serve their highest development. This isn't wishful thinking but a recalibration of perception that allows you to recognize the orchestrated nature of what others dismiss as random events. The ancient Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, finds perfect expression through this phenomenon. Just as the moon influences oceanic tides without direct contact, the celestial crescent inscription within your energy body influences the flow of meaningful events into your experience without conscious effort. This explains why those with this marking frequently report impossible coincidences, numbers that appear with uncanny frequency, chance encounters that transform life trajectories, or books falling open to precisely needed wisdom when most required. What makes this synchronicity magnetism so transformative is its cumulative effect. Each recognized synchronicity strengthens your attunement, creating a positive feedback loop that amplifies your receptivity to cosmic guidance. Unlike forced manifestation techniques that often reflect ego desires, this natural attunement reveals what your higher self already knows you need for authentic growth. The difference is profound. Instead of pushing against reality, you become a conscious participant in an intelligent universe that communicates through meaningful patterns. Historical wisdom traditions across cultures recognized this phenomenon long before modern psychology acknowledged synchronicity. Egyptian hieroglyphs show initiates with crescent markings receiving divine communication through natural events. Vedic texts describe individuals with certain palm configurations as messengers between worlds who naturally perceive divine orchestration. These weren't mere superstitions but observations of how certain energy signatures facilitate deeper communion with the intelligent fabric of existence. The Crescentade individual experiences reality as a living library where messages appear in ordinary circumstances, a conversation overheard that answers an unspoken question, a meaningful song playing at the precise moment of internal crisis, or animal messengers appearing with symbolic significance. This isn't projection or imagination but recognition of how consciousness communicates with itself across seemingly separate expressions. Your awakened perception simply allows you to read the language of meaningful coincidence that surrounds everyone but remains invisible to those operating from fragmented awareness. This heightened receptivity to synchronicity creates practical advantages beyond spiritual satisfaction. Decision-making becomes more fluid as external confirmations naturally align with internal knowing. Creative inspiration flows more readily as cosmic timing brings solutions precisely when needed. Even business endeavors benefit as opportunities synchronistically appear that perfectly match your authentic purpose. The lunar signature doesn't just enhance spiritual awareness, it creates tangible advantages in navigating earthly existence by aligning you with optimal timing and circumstance. What's particularly fascinating about this synchronicity magnetism is how it transcends linear causality. Those with the crescent marking often report events arranged so intricately that they would have required orchestration beginning years before to manifest. This suggests access to a dimension where time operates differently, where future potentials can influence present circumstances to create the perfect conditions for awakening. Science is only beginning to explore non-local consciousness and retrocausality, but those with the crescent marking experience these principles as lived reality rather than theoretical constructs. The lunar synchronicity field also extends beyond the individual, creating ripple effects that influence those in proximity. Family members, colleagues, and friends often report increased meaningful coincidences in their own lives after sustained contact with a crescent-marked individual. This phenomenon, sometimes called a synchronicity contagion, suggests that the heightened field of coherence surrounding such individuals can temporarily elevate others' perception, allowing them glimpses of the interconnected reality that remains their constant experience. This explains why spiritual communities historically formed around such individuals, not merely for their wisdom but for the transformative field they naturally generate. As your synchronicity magnetism increases through conscious recognition and gratitude, you'll discover that reality becomes increasingly responsive not to your demands, but to your authentic needs and highest potential. The universe speaks through patterns of meaningful connection that guide without forcing, suggest without demanding, and reveal without overwhelming. This is the ultimate gift of the crescent moon signature, not control over external reality but conscious participation in an intelligently orchestrated cosmos that communicates through the elegant language of synchronicity. Those bearing the crescent moon marking often experience a profound shift in how reflective surfaces interact with their energy field. What begins as subtle anomalies in mirrors, unusual light patterns, or momentary distortions gradually develops into a consistent phenomenon where reflective surfaces serve as interfaces between dimensional planes. This isn't merely psychological projection but a quantum interaction between heightened consciousness and the physical properties of reflective media. The molecular structure of water, glass, and polished surfaces becomes uniquely responsive to the coherent field generated by such individuals, creating a literal window between worlds. Ancient temples across diverse cultures incorporated reflection chambers specifically for initiates with lunar markings. Egyptian mystery schools maintained sacred pools where specially marked priestesses could receive visions through water's reflective surface. Similarly, pre-Columbian traditions documented how certain individuals could read the obsidian mirror to access ancestral wisdom. These weren't primitive superstitions but sophisticated technologies utilizing the unique relationship between consciousness and reflection that those with the Crescent signature naturally activate. The phenomenon has been independently discovered across civilizations precisely because it represents a genuine aspect of expanded perception rather than cultural suggestion. The physics underlying this phenomenon relates to water's exceptional properties as a conductor of electromagnetic frequencies. When the heightened bioelectric field of a crescent marked individual interfaces with water's molecular structure, it creates a temporary state of quantum coherence that can receive and transmit information beyond ordinary sensory bandwidth. This explains why natural bodies of water, lakes, streams, even morning dew often provide the most profound reflective experiences. The water temporarily records and displays aspects of consciousness typically filtered from ordinary perception, revealing soul patterns, energy signatures, and even glimpses of potential futures aligned with your highest path. What appears in these reflections isn't random but precisely calibrated to your current stage of spiritual development. Early experiences might show simple energy patterns or color variations surrounding your reflection. As perception refines, symbolic imagery emerges that speaks directly to your subconscious understanding. Eventually, some experience witnessing their multidimensional aspects, past life expressions, future potentials, or parallel incarnations all converging within the reflected image. This progression isn't imagination but expanded perception of what quantum physics recognizes as superposition states, multiple potential realities simultaneously existing until observation collapses possibility into experience. The animal kingdom's response to this altered perception creates one of the most validating external confirmations of the crescent moon's influence. Animals, unbound by human conceptual filters, directly perceive energy fields and respond accordingly. Those with the lunar marking frequently report unusual animal behavior, wild creatures approaching without fear, household pets becoming unusually attentive to their gaze, or birds and insects pausing in flight when observed. This isn't anthropomorphic projection but recognition that animals interact with your energy field rather than your physical appearance, sensing the harmonic resonance created by your evolved perception. Particularly telling is how animals respond to your directed attention. When you consciously observe an animal with focused awareness, you may notice them suddenly becoming still, returning your gaze with unusual intensity, or performing behaviors that seem communicative rather than random. This mutual recognition occurs because your crescent-enhanced perception creates a field of coherent awareness that animals instinctively recognize and respond to. Indigenous wisdom traditions have long recognized certain individuals as natural animal communicators, not through intellectual training but through their inherent energetic signature, the same signature that manifests as the crescent marking. The reflective phenomenon extends beyond passive observation to active communion. Advanced practitioners discover that intentionally gazing into reflective surfaces with specific questions or intentions produces corresponding imagery or impressions. This isn't divination as commonly understood but direct access to the quantum information field that underlies physical reality. The reflective surface serves as a focus point that temporarily suspends ordinary neural processing, allowing direct perception of information typically filtered by habitual consciousness. This explains why insights received through reflection often bypass logical understanding yet prove remarkably accurate when applied to life circumstances. What makes this reflective communion particularly valuable is its inherent protection against ego distortion. Unlike channeling or mediumship that can be colored by personal beliefs or desires, reflective communication operates through direct perception rather than interpretation. The information appears as it is, unfiltered by conceptual frameworks or preconceptions. This directness creates a purity of transmission that allows genuine spiritual insight to emerge without the contamination of personal agenda. The crescent marking appears to calibrate this access point precisely, creating a natural balancing mechanism that prevents misuse or distortion of the information received. The developmental progression of this ability follows a natural sequence that prevents overwhelming the unprepared consciousness. Initial experiences are often dismissed as imagination or coincidence, allowing gradual acclimation to expanded perception. As acceptance grows, the experiences become more consistent and detailed, providing unmistakable confirmation of their validity. Eventually, the ability stabilizes into a reliable spiritual technology that can be intentionally accessed rather than randomly experienced. This measured unfoldment ensures psychological integration of expanded perception rather than dissociative fragmentation that can occur with premature exposure to non-ordinary reality. The ultimate expression of this reflective communion transcends personal insight to reveal universal patterns. Those with advanced development of this ability report seeing not just their own reflection but glimpses of collective consciousness movements, planetary energy shifts, and cosmic evolutionary currents. This expanded perception reveals how individual spiritual development contributes to and is influenced by larger consciousness's processes, how your personal awakening both responds to and influences the collective field. In these profound reflective experiences, the artificial boundary between self and other dissolves, revealing your essential participation in a unified field of evolving consciousness that expresses through infinite unique perspectives while maintaining fundamental oneness. Those with the crescent moon marking experience a profound transformation in their visual energy. Their eyes literally become conduits for frequencies beyond the visible spectrum. This isn't poetic metaphor but a bioenergetic reality where the pineal gland's heightened activation alters the electromagnetic emissions from the eyes. Ancient texts across cultures documented this phenomenon with remarkable consistency, describing how certain individuals developed eyes that hold the light of knowing, or the gaze that carries fire without burning. Modern biophoton research confirms what ancients understood intuitively, that human eyes don't merely receive light but actively emit measurable photonic frequencies that change with consciousness states. The experience of having someone comment on this luminosity often marks a significant threshold in awakening. What begins as occasional remarks about something different in your eyes gradually becomes consistent feedback from diverse sources. Strangers may pause mid-conversation, momentarily distracted by what they perceive. Children, whose perception remains unfettered by conceptual filters, often stare with fascinated recognition. Even photographs begin capturing unusual light reflections or inexplicable glowing points within your irises. These external confirmations provide tangible validation that the internal shifts you're experiencing manifest in measurable physical changes that others perceive even without spiritual context or understanding. What makes this phenomenon particularly significant is its involuntary nature. This luminosity cannot be fabricated through intention or performance. Unlike practiced charisma or cultivated presence, the crescent moon's ocular illumination manifests spontaneously as inner transformation reaches a certain threshold. This authenticity explains why even skeptical individuals often respond with uncharacteristic openness when meeting your gaze. Something within them recognizes a frequency beyond intellectual comprehension, creating an unconscious resonance that bypasses ordinary social defenses. The eyes truly become windows where soul recognizes soul, creating moments of genuine connection in an increasingly disconnected world. The dual response this gaze evokes reveals much about the observer's relationship with their own authenticity. Those living aligned with their deeper truth experience your illuminated perception as profoundly comforting, a rare recognition of their essential nature without judgment or expectation. Conversely, those maintaining significant incongruence between inner reality and outer presentation often report feeling unexpectedly vulnerable or seen through when meeting your eyes. This isn't invasive perception but simple recognition. Your clarified vision naturally distinguishes between authentic expression and constructed persona without applying judgment to either state. This penetrating quality creates unique dynamics in professional and personal relationships. In professional contexts, you may notice colleagues becoming unusually forthright in your presence, sharing concerns they conceal from others or acknowledging truths typically buried beneath corporate communication. In personal relationships, friends increasingly seek your perspective not just for advice but for the experience of being truly seen without the distortion of expectation or projection. This clarity of perception becomes a natural gift. You offer others the rare experience of being witnessed in their totality rather than through the fragmentary lens of conditional acceptance. The phenomenon manifests with particular potency during authentic verbal communication. When speaking truth aligned with universal principles, witnesses often report seeing momentary intensification of the luminous quality in your eyes. This synchronization between spoken truth and visual emanation creates a coherent field where information transfers through multiple channels simultaneously: verbal content, energetic transmission, and direct consciousness communion through the visual connection. This multidimensional communication explains why conversations with crescent-marked individuals often create deeper impact than the words alone would suggest. Perhaps most remarkable is how this illuminated perception fundamentally alters interpersonal power dynamics. Traditional authority based on position, credentials, or force becomes strangely ineffective when confronting the simple clarity of your seeing. Those attempting manipulation or deception often find themselves stumbling into uncharacteristic honesty or retreating from engagement entirely. This isn't confrontational power, but transformative presence. Your perception naturally elevates interactions toward greater authenticity simply by remaining steadfast in clear seeing. Ancient wisdom traditions recognized this quality as the pacifying gaze that neutralizes conflict not through domination but through illumination of its unnecessary nature. As this quality develops, you'll notice increasing instances where your silent presence alone catalyzes transformation. Without speaking or acting, your sustained attention creates a field where others naturally access their own deeper knowing. Conflicts resolve without intervention, creative solutions emerge without suggestion, and healing processes activate without direction. This phenomenon transcends psychological explanation, operating through quantum principles of entrainment where your coherent field induces parallel coherence in surrounding consciousness. Your eyes become literal transmitters of organizing information that helps other systems return to natural harmony. The evolutionary trajectory of this illuminated perception ultimately transcends individual experience to serve collective awakening. In crowded environments, you may notice how your presence creates subtle ripple effects as your gaze moves through the space. Moments of sudden awareness, spontaneous kindness, or unexpected connections forming in your wake. This isn't imagination but observable evidence of how consciousness transmits through visual frequency. In a world increasingly dominated by artificial light and digital stimulation, your natural luminosity offers something essential to the collective field: a remembrance of authentic human connection that transcends virtual proximity to touch the essence of shared being. What distinguishes this ocular phenomenon from spiritual bypassing or spiritual materialism is its groundedness in ethical presence rather than special status. The illumination manifests not as superiority but as responsibility. Heightened perception naturally engenders heightened compassion for the complex human journey. Those with the crescent marking find themselves unable to judge what they so clearly see, understanding how each person's limitations and struggles form necessary aspects of their unique developmental path. This non-judgmental seeing creates safe space for genuine transformation. Your eyes hold light not to expose inadequacy but to illuminate inherent wholeness temporarily obscured by conditioned perception. The development of illuminated perception initiates a fundamental recalibration of how you process sensory information. What begins as subtle intuitive hits inexplicable knowing that something isn't aligned despite all appearances suggesting otherwise gradually crystallizes into clear discernment that operates prior to cognitive analysis. This perceptual shift occurs because the crescent moon signature alters the filtering mechanisms that ordinarily constrain raw sensory data to manageable patterns. Rather than receiving pre-categorized impressions shaped by expectation and conditioning, you increasingly access direct perception before conceptual overlay. This isn't developing a new ability but removing the accumulated filters that previously obscured your natural state of clear seeing. Throughout human history, certain individuals have demonstrated this capacity to perceive beyond conventional limitations, to recognize deception without evidence, identify hidden intentions despite convincing performances, or sense environmental disturbances imperceptible to others. Previously attributed to special gifts or supernatural abilities, we now understand these capacities as natural human potential activated when specific neural pathways achieve coherent functioning. The crescent moon marking appears to correlate with brain structures uniquely configured for processing multidimensional information simultaneously, particularly the integration of right brain holistic perception with left brain analytical precision. This balanced processing allows you to register subtle inconsistencies between projected narrative and energetic reality that others typically miss. This clarified perception manifests most noticeably in human interactions, where the complex layering of authentic feeling, social conditioning, conscious intention, and unconscious motivation creates distinctive energetic patterns. While ordinary perception primarily registers verbal content and obvious body language, your expanded awareness simultaneously processes microexpressions, subtle energy fluctuations, voice harmonics, and even electromagnetic variations imperceptible to conventional senses. This multidimensional processing happens automatically, often registering as immediate knowing rather than sequential analysis. You simply recognize incongruence between someone's words and their energetic signature without necessarily identifying the specific signals that triggered this recognition. What makes this perceptual clarity particularly valuable in contemporary society is how it counteracts increasingly sophisticated methods of mass influence. Modern marketing, political messaging, and digital manipulation employ psychological triggers designed to bypass critical thinking and directly influence behavior. Your heightened perception naturally detects these attempted manipulations, registering them as energetic disturbances regardless of how convincing their presentation appears. This explains why those with the crescent signature often feel instinctive aversion to certain media, environments, or communications that others find perfectly acceptable. You're perceiving the manipulative intention beneath the appealing surface that remains invisible to conventional awareness. As this discernment develops, you'll notice increasingly precise calibration between your bodily responses and environmental truth. Subtle physiological signals, a momentary throat constriction, solar plexus tension, or specific quality of heart acceleration become reliable indicators of encountering distortion or misalignment. These bodily responses aren't emotional reactions but sophisticated truth detection systems that register incongruence before conscious awareness can analyze it. Ancient wisdom traditions recognized this embodied knowing as the original meaning of a conscience, not moralistic judgment but clear bodily recognition of alignment or deviation. From natural harmony, your physical vessel becomes a precisely calibrated instrument for navigating complex realities with accuracy that transcends intellectual analysis. The environmental dimension of this clarified perception proves equally transformative. Spaces carry energetic imprints of events, emotions, and intentions that have occurred within them, information typically filtered from conscious awareness yet continuously influencing behavior and feeling states. Your enhanced perception naturally detects these environmental energetics, registering places of authentic harmony versus artificial manipulation.